You can probably tell I'm a sort of an older guy. I've been doing this type of stuff for a few years. So let's just go through a quick sort of history lesson, how B2B and EDI has evolved, because that's part of what we've tried to do with IDC, is, we look at the 70s. The 70s was really the birth of when this thing called EDI, electronic interchange, was created. We get into the 80s where companies started to use it, but all of the different industries were looking at, implementing it in their own way. We get to the 90s, and we went through the hype curve of going from mainframe to client server. So we went from big computing power to more PC-based infrastructures. We then got into the noughties. XML was going to kill everything. We were all going to move to point-to-point. Marketplaces all popped up. And there's a few there that still do exist. Ariba, part of SAP, Covisint, Exostar, and Alemica. And then we get to the noughties, and then we get to the teens, where we are now. Cloud, everything as a service. Big data, ERP, analytics, wearables, blockchain, Internet of Things. All of these things are what CIOs are having to deal with. So the fundamental message here is, part of what we do, part of what businesses have to do, EDI and B2B, it's not dead. It's still here. I remember the noughties, the early noughties, when the .com, everyone was, we all went through the Y2K, we went into .com, XML was going to take over the world, EDI is dead, don't use the dinosaurs. Well, guess what, the dinosaurs are still here. But we've adapted as well as businesses have had to do the same. Digital disruption, that's what we're talking about. All the CIOs are talking about digital disruption and how that is impacting their capability to deliver service to their business, deliver real value to the business as well. So what do they have to deal with? They're having to deal with new networks, different forms of getting data, transmitting data, consuming data. We're looking at new devices. What was it, 3-4 years ago, a 3D printer was like $2,500. You can now get them for a few £100s. And things move on all the time. And then we're getting also into areas of new information. 10 years ago, where did information come from? It came from my back office system. It maybe came from one of my partners. These days, information comes from anywhere and everywhere. Corporates are using information that we all participate in as part of a social experience. Everything we do on Facebook, on Twitter and the like, that's all a source of data that companies are using to figure out patterns in their supply chains. And that's all impacting capabilities and the ability of a CIO to really do his or her job. In terms of some of the recent meetings that we've been having with our customers, our prospective clients, there's two major themes that have come out. One is companies are looking to establish what they call a digital backbone. Global companies are very, very diverse. Disparate systems, disparate locations. They're looking at putting in a backbone to connect all of those into one coherent solution to deliver value to each of the customers' businesses, but at the same time providing an ability to talk to the external world. The other thing is a trend towards looking at their B2B infrastructure, tends to be legacy. And so guys like me, who are a little bit mature, we become a little bit more valuable temporarily. But that's another part, is looking at B2B outsourcing and how that can help towards digital transformation. So, moving on to the study, a brief introduction of the study itself. So, at the end of last year, we partnered with IDC to conduct a survey to see if there was a link between companies deploying a digital transformation solution internally and how those companies achieve that. So what we did, we partnered with them, as I said, we surveyed 254 companies, 250 if I was talking to my children, in the automotive, in high tech, in retail and CPG, and in the major geographies around the world, Europe, UK, Japan, North America, Canada, Brazil, and I missed one out, Germany and France. And I'll take you through a few slides that came out from that survey, interesting points which help us get an understanding of how digital transformation projects and how companies are adopting them. So some of the key findings, I won't dwell on every point. I hate it when someone puts a slide up and reads every single word on it. But the one point I'm going to pick out here is, and I hope I get the laser, is that 66% of companies are considering B2B outsourcing as part of their digital transformation project. And the next few slides will take you through a bit more of the detail. So in terms of maturity of digital transformation in the supply chain, this chart really is showing us the different stages of adoption. I think we all remember when this part of press the wrong button, when this part of the chart would have been called the laggards, and these would have been the future thinkers, the visionaries. We do different terms these days. However, what this does show is that a third of the respondents are already conducting, participating, implementing some form of digital transformation project. That means the board has bought into it, they're funding it. This is a real serious project within the respondents to the survey. There are a few respondents, 9% of them, so what's that? It's about 20, 25 respondents have a highly optimized supply chain. When you look at the auto manufacturers that are working on a 24/7 just-in-time production line, where parts are turning up very frequently throughout the day, they need a highly optimized supply chain. And so we'll see on the next couple of charts that the automotive industry is actually quite far ahead when it comes to a digital supply chain or a digital transformation. So if we look across different sectors, and I'm not sure if the projector can be focused at all. Some of the text is a little bit squiffy. But if we look at the digital maturity of the supply chain, again, as I mentioned, the automotive is very highly into digital supply chain, into digital transformation. They need to be. And 22%, 23%, I apologize, of the respondents have a highly optimized supply chain. We can see other parts of the supply, or different sectors, CPG. Interestingly, none of the respondents in the CPG sector said they had a highly optimized, a digital transformation project underway at the present time. They're not working towards a very process-centric, and I apologize if there are any CPG companies in the audience and I'm saying something incorrect, but this is what we got from the survey, is that in the CPG sector, there isn't much optimization at this point in time, whereas in the auto, there is. Some of the drivers, and we often find this with our conversations with our customers as well, is that the main driver for a digital transformation project is because the customer is asking us to do something. As the main driver, and over half of the respondents said they were looking at a digital transformation project because their customers were driving them to adapt, adopt, be more responsive, be more real-time, and the like. So if we look towards the disruptive technology, cloud's becoming de facto. It's becoming the platform of choice for looking at supply chain projects and for looking towards digital transformation projects. Why have all that infrastructure in-house when I can get relatively cost-effective cloud services, whether I choose to do my own stuff in the cloud or go with a partner organization? In turn, by starting to consolidate, you get additional benefits around analytics, around big data, as a stepping stone towards the Internet of Things. Machine to machine, many different phrases, but IoT is the one that really has stuck the most. As consumers, we're all used to wearables these days. Who doesn't have a Fitbit or some type of fitness tracker on their wrist? No, okay. But things like drones. Drones, we keep hearing about drones in the press, in the media, about logistics companies and the like using drones to literally drop ship onto your front lawn, onto the front garden. But things like 3D printing, robotics, they're a bit beyond that. So they're already fairly well ingrained in processes. Again, looking at automotive, there's highly robotized production lines. Unless you're spending a couple of €100,000 on a car, which tends to be highly manual. So looking at progress. What we see is, and there should be a build, 70% of respondents said they were doing B2B already, and they were doing B2B in a cloud network environment. Apologies, I expected a little bit of build there. But what we also see is in the area of drones, is that there are a large number of corporations, typically logistics providers, that are looking into that technology and looking at it from the perspective of, the last mile delivery. 3 years ago, we worked with IDC on a similar survey around digital transformation, B2B, and the likes. And machine learning was one of the high subjects of interest to CIOs at that time. So it's very interesting that machine learning, we can see here at the bottom, is some interesting statistics. 14% are sort of highly optimized in terms of a machine learning environment. We've all heard of the likes of Watson from IBM. There's Magellan from OpenText as well. I may as well plug my own product. That companies are starting to look at to help them be more intelligent with the data that they've got within their control, whether it be within their own firewall or within a cloud service environment. So when asking the respondents about benefits from using a B2B cloud service, 44 of them said it was to reduce costs. CIOs, IT directors and the like, each year are challenged to do more with less. How can I do more with less? I can use a cloud service. Tends to be, there's not the CapEx. There isn't that capital expenditure of people, processes and equipment. It's very much an operational expense type environment when using a cloud service. And if we think about it in our day-to-day lives, working in a business, we're expensive. That's why companies in the past have moved nearshore, offshore, and farshore. But that's part of one of the main drivers as we see here. I would love to take you through every single bullet, but I can't read them from here and I have my specs on. But there's a few highlights here that in certain industry sectors, we're looking here, high tech, 50% of respondents said reducing costs was what they'd realized from using B2B cloud services. Other industries. In the automotive industry, 46% said they got greater visibility, greater insight into what's happening in their supply chain by using a B2B cloud service. There's one other point. In terms of CPG, 41%. I can see it much clearer on my piece of paper. 41% of CPG respondents said they had realized greater market expansion by using a B2B cloud service. So there's no one single reason why different sectors, different organizations are adopting B2B cloud as part of helping them move towards digital transformation. So, initiatives. We start to look at those look at the key challenges to support the transformation. And I'll just read one of the questions here. I've skipped over many of them. Please describe the challenges that you face in digitally transforming your supply chain. How can companies do it? Or what is holding back companies from doing it? The respondents mainly said lack of expertise, lack of people that understand this stuff. Nice, generic, technical terms, stuff. My team use it all the time. But what does that mean? It means these new technologies like Internet of Things, like wearables, like drones, like 3D printing and the likes, there aren't as many experts as there are in the general IT environment. If we then extend it to the B2B world, there are less of us old B2B guys now because we're getting older. So part of the problem an IT director, a CIO has, is that they do not have the people. They have the headcount, but they do not have the people that bring the expertise to adopt and implement new technologies. But looking at the B2B environment, typically considered legacy, a legacy environment, lots of companies still running on-premise, running their own solutions. Although we did see a good proportion of our respondents moving to a cloud network, what we don't know from that statistic is how much of a cloud network are they using, whether they're using basic mailboxing services or they're going the full hog around an outsourced B2B environment. But what if a company can offer a service whereby they take over that B2B environment, manage it for them, free up the heads, free up the head count such that a corporation can say, okay, I've got 20 more people that I can now refocus, retrain, repurpose, and start to work on my digital transformation, start to adopt the new, exciting, sexy stuff that is going to drive business value. What happens next? There's always a next. There's always something else that happens after doing a project like this. And again, our respondents, we asked them a series of questions, and nearly half of them said that as a result of implementing a digital transformation project, they were able to benefit from consolidation of IT systems. Again, I mentioned earlier about the cloud, about the not having people, processes, and equipment in-house. That's part of the cloud service. So obviously, that also lends itself towards the consolidation of those IT systems. More and more of companies like yourselves are moving more and more to the cloud. Not so much running the ERP in-house, maybe running cloud version of it, depending on which 3-lettered company or 6-lettered company you're using as your back end. %70 said they were using a B2B cloud network, but what about the ones that aren't? Over 2/3 of them said, we are considering a B2B outsourcing or putting B2B into the cloud. Interesting statistic. Again, survey of around 250 companies. So that's still a big number of companies that haven't done it and are strongly considering it to help them realize the benefits of digital transformation, adopting the new technologies, again, that will help them drive their business and the value that they can offer to business users as well as consumers. At this point, I would just like to open up the floor to see if there's any immediate questions. Otherwise, I will take them at the end. Okay, no one brave enough. So, how can a B2B managed service help with digital transformation initiatives? Within OpenText, I said at the beginning, I represent OpenText Business Network. We're a business unit focused on the provision of services to enable companies to simplify their trading partner ecosystems. Being able to connect to one service provider, and a service provider deals with the complexity. Whether they be customers of yours, whether they be suppliers of yours, whether they be your banks, whether they be your logistics providers, whether they be 3PLs, whether they be customs organisations, any business out there, we generically refer to as a trading partner. When we get into acronym space, we talk about TPs, trading partners. Within the business, we deal with two sides of the same coin. We deal with structured information, the ability of getting data into and out of back office systems. But to provide sort of specific business-related areas, such as order and shipment visibility. Companies are buying things from wider afield these days. 20 years ago, it was all UK customers bought from UK suppliers. That's all changed, and the supply chain has got much, much longer. We're dealing with different types of compliance, governance requirements within the four walls of an enterprise. How do you deal with the exchange of large files person to person? How many companies here have got Dropbox on the forbidden list of applications to download to your desktop, if you're lucky enough to be able to download them? Solutions like that don't have the governance, the reporting and the compliance needs that that CIOs particularly need to have these days, particularly when it goes to a public organisation where there are more stringent rules around reporting and financial reporting that are required. The other half of the coin, the other side of the coin, is dealing with unstructured data. Again, I've spoken with a couple of companies today. They said, you might be surprised to hear that I get an email with an order in an Excel spreadsheet. No, I am not surprised. Dealing with that unstructured data, how do we deal with that? Whether it be a fax, we've got some, I think we have a statistics slide. We handle 2 billion pages of fax as part of the OpenText Business Network on an annual basis. I thought fax was dead. It clearly isn't. Companies, customers, you are still using faxes. How do I take that from an image to integrate it to the back-end system without a person sitting there doing the retyping? Take all of that information, start to provide analytics, embedded analytics within solutions, providing insight into that data, providing information about top performers, bottom performers, on-time shipments, invoice accuracy, and the like. But also be able to deal with it purely as a managed service, not having to do it within my own firewall, doing it as part of a cloud service. I've mentioned this already. The supply chain is complex. It will continue and it will forever be complex. We have within the organisation, we have various different pillars, if you like. We have the CRM project, we have the SRM project, and we have a logistics project, and we have various other projects. And each one of those have, in the past, have operated very much as a silo, very much as a discrete project, dealing with, interacting with the entire supply chain, whether it be a customer, a supplier, a manufacturer, a bank, customs, you name it. And it ends up looking like a bowl of spaghetti. In terms of looking at what we do as a business, is simplifying that complexity. Having one connection into a cloud service. Has my data come in from my service provider today? Yes, it has. Good. My orders have come in from my customers. Excellent. I haven't even had to worry about a customer. So having that single connection and having a service provider, an organisation, manage the complexity of the supply chain in terms of the data structures, in terms of the connectivity, in terms of the operations, in terms of the monitoring, in terms of new technologies when it comes to a B2B context. Another sort of history chart in a way. So when I was a boy, when I first started doing this stuff, when I was about 20-something, all we did, EDI meant transacting. Basically getting a connection and transacting data. Nothing else. Get an order in, get an invoice out. That was all we needed to do. We then looked at taking that, managing it, integrating it, doing much more clever stuff with the data that we were getting. And it goes on and on. We then get into the analytical phase. We start looking at the data, looking at the information, the knowledge, the insight that we can get from all of those trends that are going through a B2B cloud service. Looking forward, we're talking about orchestration, having a workflow, having a sequence of events, serializing. You know, how do we handle serialized goods? High-tech, telephony, pharmaceuticals, foods. You know, being able to track through that, through the entire supply chain. The life of a product, whether it be a mobile phone, whether it be a piece of meat, whether it be a drug, from manufacture all the way to the point where the consumer used it. I won't say eat it, because obviously we wouldn't want to eat a mobile phone. But, you know, using that orchestration, or orchestrating. Collaborating with partners rather than having a vendor-customer relationship. You will do that. No, actually, it works better if we do work together and we do cooperate and we do collaborate. And the comply bit. Compliance in the last 10 years has been increasing on the list of importance when it comes to this type of service. And it will continue to be. I mentioned right up the front, GDPR coming next year. How personal information will be handled, managed within the European Union. That will forever be there, and compliance will always be an area that we have to look at. The last bit, innovate. Innovation, we're all after innovation these days. Innovation is sometimes stifled by having to deal with the old stuff. Again, coming back to the number about the headcount, about the people. I can't do these projects because all my people is focusing on the old stuff. I cannot innovate because of that. So looking at the future, we see that B2B service providers will be able to help the innovation that companies are able to use and to actually implement, to truly optimize supply chains, to truly partner with the organizations, whether they be upstream or downstream. So what is a managed service? I'm not going to ask you to put your hands up, but I'm going to say this half of the room does it all inside, and this half of the room does it as a managed service. So what do you guys have to worry about? You guys have got to worry about providing a service that's 24/7, because you're a global business. Everybody is buying every minute of the day, whether it be a customer or a consumer. You need to think about integration to your ERP. You need to think about the data. You need to think about monitoring. You need to think about, oh my goodness me, my customer services unit has just called me to say there's a new supermarket just born called, called Wally Mart. Bad use of a name. But get them connected. Get them connected now. How am I going to do that? You've then got to deal with this thing called mapping and translation. So as a do-it-yourself, you've got to have all of these people that are providing a managed service, but also having to deal with, importantly, the onboarding, having to provide visibility, managing the infrastructure. We all have a device at home which we are all, I would say, 100% reliant upon, particularly if you've got children. It's called the Wi-Fi, it's called your router. And when the router goes down, it's pandemonium in the house. But taking that into into a B2B context, this gentleman here is smiling very wryly. In a B2B context, you can't connect, you can't get your orders in, and customer services start getting calls from their customers saying, what's going on, guys? I'm not going to get my insert product here. So that's part of what, as Business Network, we can offer to our customers, is that full managed service where we give you a service for a fee with a service level, and everything's good. Don't just take my word for it. Come to the stand. We are in the hall, but we've conducted previous surveys with Sandford, with Cranfield College, Cranfield University, and we see here various statistics around benefits achieved through B2B outsourcing. 245% ROI, 20 to 40% savings, 96% reported that they had significant value by doing a B2B project. What we are primarily is a people, processes and equipment type of business. But we're doing it in an environment such that there's economies of scale achieved through a B2B managed service. Coming back to the point about innovation, about digital supply chain, about transformation projects, some of them are held back because I do not have enough people, because they're looking at the old stuff to focus on the new stuff. So we're providing all of that external resource. B2B specialists, we're dealing with 65,000 customers around the world. Single, scalable, flexible platform. We've all heard it on the news, we've all heard it on the TV. From a consumer perspective, cloud services are prevalent. Very, very much the de facto option for most companies when they're looking to deploy a B2B project. And we therefore become part of a company's digital backbone. We effectively become another layer of middleware, in a way, I'll use that term, another enterprise service bus, whatever you want to term it. We become the trusted, externally facing, security approved in many organizations. Security is a huge, huge area of focus these days. I'm putting some of my most sensitive data into the cloud. Is it secure? When were you last penetration tested? When was your last vulnerability? Yes, I know, it's a terrible use of phrase. How secure are you? Yeah? Big, big area of focus. And as service providers, that's what we have to do. Ensure that your data is secure. That if we find a hole, we fix it. Various. As OpenText, we do not want to be, and I apologize if Sony are in the room, we don't want to be Sony PlayStation Network. We don't want to be OpenText gets hacked. Not at all. Final point on this slide before I come towards my final slide is, as part of that digital backbone, as part of that next layer of external connectivity, we flip it round. We become a seamless integration point into your back office estate, whether you be an SAP house, whether you be Oracle, whether you're doing ERP or CRM or SRM or transport management. Doesn't matter. We effectively become an agnostic layer that will connect you to anyone. If you've got one of them, great. If you've got 1,000 of them, fine. We'll deal with that complexity internally. But it still becomes just a single point. There is a web address there. I can't read it, even with my glasses on. But please do come and see us out in the stand. Myself, one of my team, Tony, is there from a technical pre-sales perspective. A couple of our commercial guys are on the stand as well, and lovely Carla, who's been looking after me, making sure I'm in the right place at the right time. So please do come along. Again, my name is Stuart Prouse. I work for OpenText Business Network. It has been a pleasure speaking with you. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them now.